At Drummond Golf, we understand your passion.
Nice roll.
And that's because every Drummond Golf store is owned and run by a local who loves the game as much as you do.
Yeah, it's come off the face really well.
Someone who knows where you play and what you need.
Oh yeah, looking good.
With Australia's biggest range and expert knowledge.
Great. Now let's try that putter with this grip.
So if you want to improve your game, see a local expert at Drummond Golf.
I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 47 of Playing from the Tips, Golf Australia Magazine's tipping and previewing podcast exploring every nook and cranny of professional golf around the world to get you in the know and with all the good oil. My name is Jim Emanuel and I have the pleasure of hosting this meandering and sometimes off-kilter exploration of tournament golf, which this week takes us to the Mornington Peninsula, Florida, California and the Middle East. Joining me on that journey is one of our regular so-called experts who this week we are hoping is shoed and socked and also having taken aim at how easy the game is at the top level. Rodney Murray, why do you hate drivers and everything they do for golf?
Just a grumpy old man. And I think the word is shod, not shoed.
Shod.
Just to pick you up on
shod.
That. Yeah. Shod. I'm pretty sure it's shod. I'm not down on drivers, Jimmy, but I kept seeing during the week, I know you might have noticed this as well, they kept replaying Montgomery's shot into the 18th there at Dubai from 1996. And what a thing of majesty it was. How long since we've seen something like that? And I just feel like, as spectators, the game would be better. I think the same thing at Augusta every year. Who doesn't want to see McIlroy have to have his hands sitting on a one iron trying to decide whether you're going to try and crack it across the lake on the 15th on Sunday afternoon? Nicholas did it. It's fabulous spectating. We just don't see it the way we used to anymore. So I think there's something in that. I don't hate them. I just wish they didn't go as far as they do.
Next is a man who is all about what Rod is advocating for. An older model himself in terms of golf professional turned commentator and a fan of older model golf equipment. Ewan Porter, welcome.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Rodney. You're right. I think it was a warbird that Monty hit off the deck back in the 90s.
Sure
not only the distance that it carried across the water under the pump, but that's not a very long green either. So the fact that he was able to hold it on the putting surface, a thing of majesty is probably an understatement.
Yeah. Imagine saying to someone on a Sunday afternoon with the tournament on the line, just cut a high driver off the deck into this par five. And he did, just fabulous stuff. Okay, that's a whole other issue, but there you go.
We will do our review of last week's golf very shortly. But first, you had some exciting news we were just discussing off air over the weekend with the rebrand of your junior golf tour and a new schedule. Can you give us a quick couple of points on the next gen amateur tour leading into 2024?
Yeah, thanks very much, Jimmy, and thank you for the press release as well. It's been very, very well received. Feedback's been very positive. And, last year I was just saying to Rod off air that we expanded to allow 19 to 25-year-olds playing, but we were still under the Junior Sixes brand. So it caused a little bit of confusion in regards to eligibility in that regard. We've dropped the Sixes knockout bit at the end of the tournament. So this year we've got players 25 years and under, 20 official World Amateur Golf Ranking events, 14 in Australia, 6 in Asia, culminating with the final at Commonwealth at the end of the year, and lots of tour exemptions and Adidas and Titleist scholarships. It's all about playing opportunities and pathways for the next generation of talent, and another exciting year awaits, hopefully.
Well, congratulations on that. I know Rod is a big fan. I'm a big fan, and maybe we'll touch on it in the future in this podcast with a little bit of previewing and whatnot. But speaking of last week and the golf, plenty of highlights. Kazuma Kabori winning in the Murray River, Nick Dunlap, and the first amateur since Phil Mickelson to win on the PGA Tour, Rory, 6 Aussies at Asian Tour Q School. Rod, any particular highlights for you?
You can't go past an amateur winning on the PGA Tour, can you? I mean, I was there when Aaron Baddeley won the Australian Open at Royal Sydney in 1999, and that was really quite special. But you can't compare the Australian Open, even the field we had that year, which was good. Montgomery was in the field, actually. Interesting that year, as was Norman and Faldo, I think, too. Can't compare that to what you see on the PGA Tour. And just that style of golf, Ewan, it can be a bit one-dimensional, that American style, can't it? But is it more difficult as a professional to play a tournament where every par you make you feel like you're going backwards, or is it more difficult to play those tournaments where every par you make you feel like you're going forwards?
It's a good question, and I hated playing tournaments where 30 under would win and the cut was 1,000 under par. I couldn't stand it, and it probably sounds negative, from a mental perspective out on the golf course. But you're right. I mean, I did not like the idea of dropping a shot and effectively losing 20 spots and about 100 grand. That didn't really sit well with me, and hence my best performances throughout my career were on harder golf courses where par was a little bit more your friend. So the players that do well on those courses, I've got nothing but respect for them and kudos to Nick Dunlap. Obviously, I actually communicated with Nick Dunlap about 18 months ago to come and play our Adidas Junior Sixes World Final. Don't think that'll be happening now, but he's obviously an incredible talent, and 29 under par for 4 rounds. PGA West, the stadium course. I played my first final stage of Q School there in 2004 over 6 rounds, and if you shot 6 under par, it might have been 7 under par for 6 rounds, you finished top 25 and earned your PGA Tour card. That golf course used to be classified as hard. Now, bear in mind, 20 years ago, the rough was 6-7 inches thick as well, which they don't have during the Amex tournament, but they're just tearing it apart these days.
It's extraordinary talent, isn't it? I don't know, Jimmy. I watched Nick Dunlap last year at the Walker Cup at St Andrews, where he really struggled, and he'd gone into that event with loads and loads and loads of hype about him. And I remember thinking, he doesn't look like he kind of gets it, but my goodness, he gets that American golf, and that's an extraordinary performance for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, he got a drubbing in the singles at the Walker Cup. I think he got beaten 6-5 or something like that.
6-5, yeah.
And that's a Porter Emanuel scorecard, that. But it was unbelievable how different a golfer he was.
Who's 5 there, Jimmy? You haven't clarified, mate.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's okay. We don't need to go into any further depth. But, yeah, so impressive. And, and to make the score he made down 18, everything about it was impressive. So congratulations, Nick Dunlap. And as I mentioned, the Aussies from Q School, Justin Warren, Sam Brazel, Harrison Crowe, Jordan Zunick, Maverick Antcliffe, Lockie Barker, all great guys, number one, but great players. Justin Warren, I feel particularly happy for. Cathedral Invitational. He was in with a chance to win on the last day at the end of 2023. He made a 7 and an 8 or something like that. He was visibly distraught when he came back to score return, even though it's a small invitational event. And he said to me in passing, I don't know how I can keep doing it. And he's now got a card to play overseas. So congratulations to Wazza, because he's a good guy.
He is a good guy. He seems to have bad luck following though, Jimmy. Was it him that had the ball bounce out of the hole at the Q School in the US?
Yep. Correct.
Just extraordinary. I remember writing a piece about him, actually. I'll tell you what impresses me about him is the piece I wrote about him. There was a tournament, it wasn't a Cathedral in days, there was a similar tournament where he had a chance when he went in like 4 or 5 over the front 9 on the Sunday and shot 4 or 5 under the back. It's like, well, you didn't win, but my goodness, that's impressive, and that'll hold you in good stead, and it has. So good on him.
I think that was earlier this season on the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia. He hits it a mile, but he's got talent. He's a lovely guy, Justin. So finally on last week, before we jump ahead, we opened the account strongly with tipping. 2 wins, 4 top 10s, Logue's reign of terror over. I had both wins, so Logue, you can stay wherever country you are. We don't need you back. Let's go on to this week. Rod, you can take us from here. Farmers Insurance Open, Torrey Pines. Tell us all about it.
Sponsor watch, Farmers Insurance Open. This is not going to come as a shock to me.
Insurance.
They're in insurance. So not really much more you can say about that, although they are one of the sponsors who are choosing not to renew for the PGA Tour. Their contract comes up in 2026, and I'd like to get Ewan's thoughts on some of that, perhaps, and the impacts of that, because that is a real concern, I think, for the PGA Tour. They lost Honda, Wells Fargo, Farmers Insurance. These have been long-term sponsors. Farmers Insurance have been there since 2010. So all that off-course stuff that's happening with the PGA Tour has really wide-ranging ramifications. And so, unfortunately, that'll probably be a bit of the story this week, even though they've got 2 years to go. It'll probably be a bit of the story this week, so I'm sure the players will be asked about it. But that's more broadly. The unusual thing about this event, played from Wednesday to Saturday. Anybody want to know why? because they
NFL playoffs.
NFL football. That's exactly. I'm surprised the other networks don't just shut down when the NFL thing's on, because nobody watches anything but the football, do they? And even the PGA Tour has bowed to that. It's played over 2 courses, the North and the South. I'm sure Ewan's played both of those courses, and I'll get his thoughts on it. The South is the tougher of the two. It's the one that hosted the US Open. Was the longest course on the PGA Tour last year. Most people will be familiar with it. There's nothing architecturally amazing about it. The location is extraordinary along the cliff tops there in California. Look, it's always a good event. Big field because they've got 2 courses. Max Homa defending 3 of the world's top 10 and 8 of the world's top 20 in the field, so it should be a good event. Tournament within the tournament this week. It's a qualifying event for the signature event next week at Pebble Beach. I think top 5 through those listings at the end of this week will get a start there, and that is, well, those guys who might get in there, that's probably going to have a bigger impact for them than if one of the big name players wins the tournament. So, look, it's been one of the staple weeks on the PGA Tour forever. If you've been to PGA Tour, follow it all, you'll be familiar with Torrey Pines and the Farmers Insurance Open, and we know what we'll expect this week, and it'll be good, fun. So, just quickly, Australians in the field.
And one of the other great places where you get an odd prize for winning, where you get a surfboard, because
is that right?
Yeah, you get a winner gets a trophy and a surfboard because why not?
Okay, interesting. I forgot Australians in the field. Aaron Baddeley, Harrison Endicott, Jason Day and Min Woo Lee. And before we get Ewan's thoughts on the course, I'm going to tip Jason Day. So that's me out of the way. Ewan, have you played Torrey Pines North and or South?
I've played South course. Jason Day, he's won around there. He's been close, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's won twice.
He's won a couple of
twice. Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, I think one of the things about playing golf in particularly Southern California is the ball doesn't go very far. You're playing at sea level. It's fairly similar to playing in Sydney on the Kikuyu grass, but heavy air, particularly this time of year. And you mentioned the South is the longest golf course in the PGA Tour. Well, add another few hundred yards onto that with how long it does play. And, you shoot under par around there. You're doing really, really well. It's probably a little bit chalk and cheese to last week, really.
And Port's a thought on a winner?
Well, just had a quick peruse of the field as we're speaking here, and a couple of Europeans making their debuts as PGA Tour members this week. Nikolai Højgaard and Adrian Logue, both coming off strong performances last week. I'm going with the former, Nikolai Højgaard. I expect him to make his presence felt right off the bat on the PGA Tour. If the win doesn't come this week, it's coming at some point, but seriously talented, and he's very, very keen on focusing on the States this year, and I think that win could be this week.
What's the adjustment?
Colin Morikawa, before you jump in, Rod, I'm going to go with Colin Morikawa, who I spent some time with in Hawaii about a week and a half ago.
Oh, that's him done.
Bristled.
It's already a tough 2024 for him. He's had to
bristled at the suggestion of Padraig Harrington talking about you've got a window to win majors and his might be done. So I think Colin Morikawa is set for a big year. So, Ports, while we're talking Torrey Pines, we may as well go with one of your better stories. Of course, Torrey Pines, 2008 US Open. It was a Monday playoff between Rocco Mediate and Tiger Woods. And has Rocco ever called you for missing the putt that allowed him to get through the qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, history could have very well changed, couldn't it? I mean, it was a 36-hole qualifier, the sectional qualifier, the final qualifying for the US Open at Torrey Pines in Columbus, Ohio. I 3-putted the 36th hole from about 15 or 20 feet. I think I finished 5 under par for the 36 holes. Whatever the number was, I missed out by 1. But that 3-putt allowed Rocco Mediate and Ricky Fowler to qualify for the US Open there at Torrey Pines. And obviously, if I'd have 2-putted that, I would have been in a playoff for them and for those spots. And one of the aforementioned players, could have been myself anyway, would have missed out. But if I 1-putted or 2-putted that, history might not look the same. I know if I had have played, I certainly wouldn't have been in a Monday playoff. In fact, I wouldn't have probably played Saturday or Sunday.
One of the great tournaments.
Weather wasn't there. Everyone played on Saturday.
Yeah, that was one.
I did have that at the Open in 2010 at St Andrews. Missed the cut, but played Saturdays. I always played the weekend at the Open.
Yeah, very nice. It's one of the great tournaments, that one. I wanted to ask you, Ewan, you've picked Nikolai Højgaard there, and it's interesting. This is the first year we've seen the top 10 on the DP World Tour get their PGA Tour cards. What are the adjustments somebody like Nikolai Højgaard needs to make? You go from a fairly small pond where you're a big fish into a really big pond, don't you, where you're a tiny fish, if you're even noticed at all.
Well, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you or the audience, what I'm about to say, but I did have a chat to Nikolai and his brother last year in Czech Republic. It was in August, and I think he played 8 to 10 events on the PGA Tour last year. He did have a runner-up in the Dominican Republic, I think it was, to Matt Wallace, but he said, yes, it's a different style of golf. I think the best players can assimilate to that. It's the cultural change he found from Europe to the US. He found very, very difficult, very challenging. We've seen players in the past like Olesen, Nico Kolsarts really struggle with the shift from Europe to the US and always end up back in Europe. Nikolai wasn't a big fan of travelling around in America last year and the loneliness of the PGA Tour. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he sort of feels about that in 12 months' time. I think talent alone will get him across the line for a victory. But, yeah, long term, you've got to love what you're doing and where you're playing. And if that love's not there in the States, then he might be back in Europe more often than we think.
Bob McIntyre's in the same boat, isn't he? He's upped and moved to America, and he's kind of come out public and said he's got to really make an effort. But it feels like if you've got to make an effort, you're already kind of behind the 8 ball, aren't you?
Lee Westwood, another player, moved everything to Florida 10 years ago, 15 years ago when he was number one and was back in the UK a couple of years later. It's not for everyone.
No.
But it sounds very appealing, moving to Florida, playing the PGA Tour, making millions. But you're right, if you're not loving it, well, what's the point?
Particular Seve, Michael Campbell, Greg Turner. There's been loads of golfers over this. It just could not. And Americans don't understand it, I don't think, but America is a very different place to Europe. And Seve used to talk about all these guys go to the same restaurants in different states. It's the same food. They go at 7:30 at night. He wants to eat at 10:30 in 10 different places. It's just a whole culture shock for a lot of people from Europe, I think, and not all of them cope with it. So, yeah, interesting.
You know the feeling when your mate's golf ball flies past yours? Or when you're on the green in regulation, but he holes it from the bunker? At Drummond Golf, we get it. That's why we have our lowest price guarantee. As Australia's biggest, you can count on our massive buying power for the lowest prices in golf. But if you do happen to find a lower advertised price, we'll beat it. The Drummond Golf lowest price guarantee. Unbeatable. Conditions apply.
All right, let's now go a little closer to home and let's go to the WebEx Players Series Victoria, held annually at Rosebud Country Club. This was the first of the innovative men's, women's, juniors, all abilities events on the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia and WPGA Tour of Australasia. A number of years ago, it came about, hosted by Jeff Ogilvy, and kind of was the first start post-COVID of these events. Korea's Min Yoon defends her title this week. It's a composite course at Rosebud, so the North gives 16, while the South's 1st and 18th holes replace the 6th and 7th on the North, both highly ranked. So South is 56, North is 27th in the top 100 public access courses. So great golf, conditions always outstanding. Actually hosted an Aussie PGA won by Billy Dunk many, many years ago down at Rosebud. So great golf course for the golf course design nerds. In terms of the field, similar to what we had last week, with the addition of the guys coming back from Asian Tour School, plenty of informed players, but invites for pros and amateurs make for a little bit of interesting reading. The likes of Marcus Fraser, Matt Goggin, Felicity Johnson, close friend of you, Rodney, Jasper Stubbs, Phoenix Campbell, Quinn Croker, Amelia Harris, and Sue O, making an appearance after being in the bridal party at the Green Felton wedding last weekend.
Nice.
Anyone want to lead us off with a pick?
Well, actually, just looking at the tournament invites, you forgot Wei Zhang from China, so it got to be a good shout this week. But one thing I did see on social media, they've moved the 9th tee back to, I don't even know where it is, but you hit over a toilet. Apparently straight in the middle of a toilet block from the men's tee. So don't hit it off the bottom groove.
If you're looking for that was Rob Williamson on Twitter, who works down at Rosebud and posted the video. And the tee is on the fairway of one of the holes on the south course. And you basically, go straight over the top of a toilet block to make it long enough. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, have they got a windmill somewhere around there too? I mean, that's just the perfect candidate really for the rollback discussion, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely it is.
It's silly because golf courses, certainly in this country, certainly in Sydney, just don't have the room to do that. But Elvis Smiley, runner-up here as an amateur, I believe, about 3 years ago, shot a pair of 63s on the weekend. did well again last year. I was down there calling it when Min Yoon won. I think she just tipped James Marcassani, the local, at the post, but Elvis did well there. And I like Elvis's chances this week. And Todd Sinnott, another player from down that way who has been very consistent the last 18 months after a few years doing it tough with injury. So I think they're your two players, certainly from the male side. Throw Kazuma Kabori, last week's winner, in there too. He's had an incredible 12 months and is always very consistent. And Suo from the female side, I expect to see her right up there too.
Absolutely. All very sensible takes. I will say Elvis Smiley, who started working on his game with Richie Smith, or as one of, who was it who said to me, has joined Team Richie. Yeah. I think Elvis is on the track to do some very, very good stuff. He looks like he's really playing well, and he went over for the little mini boot camp that they have. Min Woo was the one who said that to me. Rod, a tip from you?
Well, I like to cheer for the story, Jimmy, because we're journos. I'm going for Momoka Kabori, but it's not fanciful because she can play. And last week, her brother getting home might just tip her that. Good player, and it would be fabulous to see. I like it when the women win these events. Lots of people don't. That's part of the reason I like it. I think the tournaments have got issues when they're under this setup as well, but it's all good fun. And these series of events, I'll say it again, have just been. This is it's the best thing that I can think that professional golf's done in this country for a long time is these WebEx Players Series events, this whole last 3 years, and it's been fantastic. And you can see the results, can't you? Those guys getting their cards on the Asian tour, they would all point to the fact that they've had places to play proper competitive golf against other proper competitive golfers. That's what you need to do as a pro. You can't be spending 6 months in Australia just practicing and expect to compete. So, yeah, good to see these. Good to see
Momoka, of course. I think she was tied for third last week. She was well behind her brother. She butchered the champagne celebration with Hani Song. So absolutely big chance. And women play better at this one than they do at some of the others. Murray River's one of the other ones where the women play well. But I expect her to go close. My tip is going to be Jack Carter. Jack Carter is a player on the rise. Really good ball striker and absolute star. So I think Jack Carter gets it done this week. Let's go back to you, Rod. LPGA Drive-On Championship in Bradenton, Florida.
Well, I'm going to throw this straight back to you, Jimmy, because I can't figure it out despite my best efforts. What is the whole drive-on thing? This started during COVID when they had a bunch of tournaments cancelled overseas. So they created this drive-on thing and they had a bunch of tournaments, about 6 or 7 of them, I think, that had sponsors. But this drive-on championship doesn't have a sponsor. I can't find any mention of a sponsor anywhere. And it's only got two events having listed. Last year when Celine Boutier won, she beat Georgia on the Bluff, and Leona Maguire the year before. So it's at the Bradenton Country Club. You got any idea what's going on with the drive? Because it's a LPGA brand as well. They do a series of videos on YouTube and social media that are drive-on. So are the LPGA picking up the tab for this event? Is that what we're to assume?
Oh, I think so. So drive-on is a greater storytelling element about the players and about the tour. And
which I love, by the way. It's a fantastic initiative, and they do it really well.
And these events filled a gap in COVID when they lost some sponsors and everything like that. But they've obviously maintained one. But, as far as I can tell, I think this might have even been the LPGA Drive-On Championship presented by insert bank or pharmaceutical company last year. But no sponsor as far as I can tell. So I'm right on the same page.
Surprising because they've upped the prize money this year by over $20 million or $30 million total throughout the year. So obviously sponsors are chipping in, and last week's sponsor Hilton announced a 5-year extension on their partnership and prize money increase in 2025. So I'd be a little surprised that there's no title sponsor.
It just seems odd, although look, good luck to them if they do have something that's their own. But it just it fondles me. On a broader note, though, Ewan, if you were a company looking to get into the golf sponsorship business and you were choosing between the PGA Tour and the LPGA at the moment, it feels like it'd be a no-brainer where you get a better return on investment, doesn't it?
And I can tell you from personal experience, chatting to a couple of friends of mine in recent times who work for Accenture and PwC here in Australia, there's very, very little interest in the men's game globally. Sponsorship, it's all women. And what we're seeing with Liv in the men, there's the whole equality issue going on in sports in general the last few years. And if men continue to make the money that they are, well, then the women something's got to happen with the women's game. You've got to bridge that gap somehow. So there's so much potential there with the women, I think, the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Look, it's apart from anything else, it's an extraordinary product, and people who don't give it a chance are missing out because the women put on a terrific show pretty much every week, and I would expect it again this week. So you mentioned there, it's actually Bradenton, I think it's actually pronounced, Jimmy. I always thought it was Bradenton too.
Bradenton, yep.
Yeah, I always thought Bradenton because it rhymes with brat. I always think of brats when you think of this part of Florida because it's a real country club area, isn't it, this part of Florida? It's all tennis and, hockey and all that sort of stuff and golf. But anyway, look, Bradenton Country Club is originally a Donald Ross design, celebrates its centenary this year. I'm really going to be interested to see it because they did a renovation several years ago with an architect whose name I didn't know, but Tony Jacklin advised on some changes to the course in 2018. So they took out all the asphalt cart paths, so Logue would be happy about that. Removed 556 trees, replaced about half of them with palm trees because they weren't native, they weren't local species, and they were causing problems with the grass. It sounds like they've really taken this golf course back to something like what Donald Ross perhaps designed. So I'm really keen to have a look at this venue this week. It seems to be that we get really good we tend to get really good tournaments when we get the top women on these old-style golf courses. You tend to get really good competitive golf too. So the field won't be a problem. We've got lots of four of the world's top five. Lilia Vu, Celine Boudier, the defending champion, Ronan Ying, Nelly Korda. Lydia's back after last week, which I also thought was a terrific story. Alison Corpuz, Brooke Henderson, Leona Maguire, Lynn Grant, Ali Ewing, who played well last week. Take your pick. There'll be no problem with the players putting on a good show. Australians in the field, Grace Kim, Sarah Kemp, Gabby Ruffles and Robin Choi. Gabby's one I really want to watch this year. I feel like she's a special talent in some way. So look, I expect it to be good. The golf course will be a real feature this week, so I'm going to be watching more of that than I might otherwise normally. But the LPGA Drive-On Championship presented by an unknown sponsor. There we go.
Be nice to see more golf course, more tournaments on old style courses like this, wouldn't it? And I think the issue is generally always infrastructure and being able to erect all the correct stands and grandstands, corporate marquees and television production trucks and all of that around the golf course. And quite often the old school courses, there's just not enough room. But for us as viewers, it'd be wonderful to see that. And the field you mentioned, incredible talent, isn't it? I just having a look through it here. I mean, I did the 4 LPGA events in Asia at the end of last year. I'm heading up there next month to do a couple of events, and it's a wonderful product. And the girls are so accessible; they're so easy to talk to. I think the games are much more relatable for the average punter as well. Certainly with the technology we're seeing these days. Nasa Hataoka. Just chalk her down for a win. She's going to claim her 7th LPGA win this week.
Just done. In. All right. Rod, who are you going to then tip to come second?
Well, I don't know if you call this, but last year I'm pretty sure I made this caveat, and it still stands. Lynn Grant is my tip every week because she's just got such an extraordinary golf swing. So that's a given. And then I get a second pick each week because she's my perennial. So Ayaka Furuwe, who I've tipped before, but this golf course I think will suit her. It's not particularly long. She's not a long hitter, but I think it will really favour the player who is who can both think well about where to hit it strategically and then execute. And that is her game all over. So I like Ayaka Furuwe, and she played quite well last week too.
Nice. Well, I'm going to go with Nelly Korda because she plays well in Florida. It's in Florida. Yep. There's pretty much everything pointing to the right direction. I think she had a pretty decent finish last week as well. So
she's Nelly Korda. You don't really need to say anymore, Jimmy. She's an exceptional talent. She really is.
Exactly. All right. Finally, the DP World Tour continues its Middle East swing, this time with the Ras Al Khaimah Championship, or Khaimah, depending on who's saying it, in the UAE. Host venue Al Hamra Golf Club, which has yielded winning totals of 17 and 24 under, so expect plenty of birdies again. Water all around the golf course. Par 5 last is really water all over the place, but very much resort style. Most of the leading players from the former European Tour have departed the desert, so it's much more your usual sort of a DP World Tour field this week. Special mention for Dave Micheluzzi, who makes his debut as a DP World Tour member outside of Australia, having played the Open and PGA at the end of last year. He's joined by Jason Scrivener. They're the only Aussies in the field, but sort of all the names you'd expect, but with a couple of extras like Padraig Harrington and stuff going to tee it up here. These are the fields that are probably going to be affected more by that top 10 moving over to the PGA Tour. Those guys who are playing for points and Order of merit spots might have teed up here. Ryan Fox, for example, won here a couple of years ago. He's in California instead. I think Nikolai Højgaard actually won here as well. So you're looking at those sort of guys not being in the field. But let's get a winner. And Rod, you can lead us off with who you think's going to win this one.
Well, I won't go with Nikolai, who, if I recall, this was probably the tournament. You remember this, Ewan. Did he not Houdini it about 4 times on the back 9 the year he won here? He hit it all over the park and somehow got across the line. It was extraordinary golf.
He did. I think the more miraculous finish, though, was last year. Daniel Gavins holed about a 20 or 30-foot putt for a 7 on 18 to win by 1.
Yeah. That's covered. Standing on the tee, I can make 7 here and still win. You don't want to go ahead and do it, though, do you? That's not what that means. I don't think it'll be Scott Jamieson, I think. Did you guys watch some of the green room stuff that the DP World Tour introduced last week?
Yeah.
Poor old Scott Jamieson came into the trailer looking at defeat event. We won't pick him this week. I'm not even sure he's in the field. I'm going to go for Nikolai's brother Rasmus. He's finished well here before. He had a poor final round here last year and fell back down the field. He had a poor final round last week to fall just outside the top 10, but that's a player who's in the right place. If you can play 3 rounds, you can play 4. This might be his week this week. So go Rasmus Højgaard.
Yeah, he was injured for a little while last year too. Yeah, I'm going with a man who has won 4 times in the last 18 months, Pablo Larrazabal. Resurgent Pablo Larrazabal at the age of 40. He played well as well, I think, here last year or the year before. 3rd last week, so he's in form. And if it's not him, it'll be Yannick Paul.
Okay. And a fiery Twitter exchange with Ben Arn.
Oh, absolutely.
Pablo and Ben
Pablo, you can tell when he's up and about his golf game because he's all over social media and willing to take on anyone. He and Mike Lorenzo Vera might be 2 of the better follows for what goes through their mind when they've played well or not well. But James Morrison was the other one in that chair the other day, and it was one of the more interesting sort of things the DP World Tour content team's ever done. So I'm going to go with Tom McKibben. Everyone knows he is from Rory's hometown, all that sort of stuff, but I've seen him play a bit in the last couple of months and very impressed. I think he still has Dave McNeely on his bag. So 50-something year difference between player and caddy in age, one of Mike Clayton's favourite stats of the Aussie summer, but really good player. And I think these sort of fields, we're going to see a few more of those young guys come through and have a few wins this year. So Tom McKibben for me. That will just about do us. Ewan, as I mentioned, did ask us to look for obscure tournaments. This week's quiet on the obscure front, but I'm assuming you'll be back in March, Ports, when the All-Pro Tour kicks off with the Coke Dr. Pepper Open, which is my favourite tournament name I've ever found.
The Coke Dr. Pepper Open. I'm surprised it's not the Coke Dr. Pepper Pepsi Open. Or lemonade or Sprite thrown in there too.
Yeah, I didn't know that Dr. Pepper was a part of the Coca-Cola family. You might know better, having married someone from within the Coca-Cola amateur world, but yeah.
Exactly. You're going to have to ask that, but that's a great tournament and no doubt a great field as well. I think that'll probably be PGA Tour Live or something. So, I'll look out for that.
The only way it could be better, Jimmy, is if they were to play it in the town where Rich Beam won his first professional tournament, which was Truth or Consequences in New Mexico.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
That's the all-time.
When I was a young man playing video games, every single player I would make always came from Truth or Consequences.
You'd love to know how the name came about. It would seem fairly obvious, but my goodness, there must be some stories about that. Truth or Consequences. I love it.
Did you find that in Bud, Sweat and Teas, Rod?
I'm not sure where I had it, but it's the sort of thing, Ewan, that doesn't matter where you hear it, you never forget it. You never forget that fact. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Well done. Good work.
Ports, thank you for replacing Logue. You've made him feel superfluous, I think. So good luck with the Next Gen Amateur Tour this year, and thanks, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some stage.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, Rod. Look forward to our gala day, pending soon.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Rod, thank you. You've, again, proved the doubters wrong, but think you're nothing without Logue as your sidekick. I think you're just knocking that out of the park.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll take that with me and give it some thought, ponder.
Yes, that's it for episode 47 of Playing from the Tips. You can follow along with all these tournaments and much more on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au, and go out and get a copy of the February issue of the magazine. Minwoo Lee on the cover. Focus is all about fixing your swing, what's next for Liv, an update on Michael Hendry's leukemia battle, and a lot more. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.